Just 9 days away from WrestleMania 40, and Becky Lynch is on a current book tour. So just like Ronda Rousey, they're talking a lot. They're trying to sell those books, and Becky Lynch is really peeling back that curtain, talking about a variety of subjects in depth. Everything from Charlotte Flair and their real-life disdain for one another, at one point really good friends, and unfortunately, that turned sour, and on live TV, too. That SmackDown when Charlie threw the championship at the feet of Becky. She was supposed to hand it to Becky. That did not go off as planned, and that was just one of the tips of the icebergs that had been building for many, many months, according to Becky Lynch. And she talks about how today they're cordial, they're professional with one another, but nowhere near friends. And she talks also about Mercedes Moné, FKA Sasha Banks, and the money that she is making in AEW, how much Tony Khan has paid her. And Becky is talking about how she's happy for Sasha, for Mercedes, and how that's important for equal pay for the ladies, just like the dudes, going forward. Becky also opened up about her contract status with WWE. There's only a couple months left in the contract right after WrestleMania. That contract is done. So Becky Lynch is opening up about that. We expect her to sign just like Drew McIntyre. We expect both to be fully signed, I's dotted, T's crossed, before WrestleMania, sometime next week. Drew and Becky should be locked in because we expect both to be winning championships at Mania. There's no way that's going to happen without both individuals locked down. But the biggest talking point to come out of this book tour so far, for Becky Lynch anyway, is her opening up about Ronda Rousey. Of course, Seth Rollins just talked about Ronda and why he feels she failed in WWE. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes, but I want to go over Becky's actual quote, because Becky is opening up. And what Becky says as to why Ronda failed in WWE, it's much more direct. Becky just says, and I quote, she couldn't wrestle. She just couldn't wrestle. So what I want to do, I want to give you the actual quote. This is in regards to Ronda Rousey. This is an actual quote from Becky Lynch. If we do good, the company does good. So I don't think anybody was trying to make anybody else fail. When you love this, you look to try and make it better. How can I make this better? But Ronda was coming from a different industry where she was the star, and she should have been handled differently. In terms of her first outing, where everybody thought, oh, she can wrestle. And I mean this with respect, but she couldn't wrestle. Like, what we do isn't something where you can just have one good match and then, okay, yeah, I'm off to the races. It's a craft, and you have to learn your craft, and you have to be diligent about learning your craft. But everybody treated Ronda like she already knew it, because when she first came in, she was good in that first bout. But then she was also working with Kurt Angle. She was working with H. She was working with Stephanie McMahon. It was a well-rehearsed match because everybody wanted her to succeed. And then it was like, okay, she can do this. Off to the races. And that was mishandling her because she was a big star in her own right, and she had done so much for MMA. So in terms of that in booking, that just wasn't done well. But my experience coming from nobody, thinking that I was going to be worth anything, and making myself very valuable to the company and very valuable to wrestling in general, it's because I loved it. I loved it. And I sought out to do it. And then she just comes in, and I think she found a place that she enjoyed, that she liked, but she never sought to do it from a young age. And I think that changes the experience that you have when you go into a place. End quote. A lot to unpack there, obviously, but that line is so vivid when you hear her say, I mean this with respect, but she couldn't wrestle. Like, some people just have that it factor, right? You can get in there and just quickly, snap of a finger, blink of an eye, drop of a hat, you just get this wrestling thing. Kurt Angle is a prime example. Logan Paul is another. Man, you go back to that WrestleMania match, her debut, tagging up with Kurt Angle, taking on Triple H and Stephanie, how good that match was and how good Ronda looked. And we said right on this channel, BC told you that was a heavily rehearsed matchup. You could just tell. But we were hoping that Ronda just has that it factor, that even after that match, you're going to see that type of a Ronda Rousey. And unfortunately, we never saw it. And booking failed her as well, as Becky Lynch went on to say. So in terms of that and booking, that just wasn't done well, end quote. So in terms of thinking that Ronda could actually wrestle and hold up that level of wrestling, which never happened, and then the booking failed her by just making Ronda Rousey a face, which to this day is befuddling to any wrestling fan, let alone somebody that followed Ronda Rousey through MMA into the wrestling world. How do you take somebody like Ronda Rousey, who got over in MMA, not just because how badass she was, but the crap that she talked? She was just a natural-born villain, right? All the trash talking. That's what helped make Ronda Rousey, or at least get her over the top. She comes to WWE, which is the perfect place to talk that trash, the perfect place to be a bad guy. And they try to make her this baby face, this hero. So Becky Lynch is 1,000,000,000% right on the booking part. And again, what's going to be talked about a lot is, I mean this with respect, she just couldn't wrestle. And that first match, and we talked about it, how heavily rehearsed it was, that ended up being what we all were hoping it wasn't going to be, a detriment to Ronda Rousey. Because the booking and Ronda Rousey herself could never live up to that first match. So very candid by Becky Lynch. Seth Rollins, her husband, he talked recently about why he feels that Ronda Rousey failed in WWE. And he talks about how she just couldn't hack it, right? The travel was just too much for her. It was just too hard for her. From top to bottom, start to finish, beginning to end, it was just too hard for Ronda. And she just couldn't hack it. And now Becky Lynch she's taking a more direct approach. While that is true, she's saying she also just couldn't wrestle. And that's a problem in wrestling. If you don't have that over-the-top character, if you're not making people feel something, and on top of that, you're not that good at the wrestling thing, you're probably going to fail immediately. Like the Ultimate Warrior. He was never known as the best wrestler, but damn, the music would hit and everybody would be off their rocker, right? Jaws drop, screaming top of their lungs. It was the Warrior. That guy could go in for 60 seconds, a shoulder tackle, a press slam, call it a day, and people feel like they got their money's worth. They got to see the Ultimate Warrior perform. That's just how it was with certain individuals. Goldberg, never a good wrestler. That dude could go in, spear, jackhammer, call it a night, and WCW fans felt like they got their money's worth. You know, certain individuals, they make you feel something. They're just larger than life. Ronda Rousey, MMA, maybe. WWE, it was never that case. They tried to make her the baby face. Everything. It was just a marriage that it's like CM Punk and AEW, a marriage that was going to end in divorce immediately. Ronda Rousey and WWE, surprising that it actually lasted as long as it did. Becky Lynch, I mean this with all respect, but she just couldn't wrestle. All right. Well, that pretty much puts an exclamation point on any return for Ronda, because that's going to be one of those lines that's really going to be vivid in everybody's memory, right? Because what's going to change if Ronda ever does come back? People are going to now really put the microscope on her wrestling, so the booking better be flawless. All right, that's what I got for you now. 9 days away from WrestleMania. Keep it locked on the channel for all the latest updates, news, and top stories in the pro wrestling world leading up to the biggest event of the year. Until next time, and there will be that next time. Top guys, we're all BC saying check you.